Todd Muller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rise to take a short call. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the Weathertight Homes Resolution Services Amendment Bill. Now it's been reported back from the Select Committee, and I think my colleague and Chairman Mr. Simpson summarised our process in the Select Committee very well. It was collegial, which is becoming almost a habit in the Local Government and Environment Select Committee, and yes, I'm sure you will, Mr. Robertson. But it was a very good process, and obviously this particular bill came from the history of the Financial Assistance Package Amendment, which was obviously a very good law that we put in place, and was immediately taken up by a number of people. But as they went through the process, obviously a couple of little anomalies were identified, and it is appropriate to make sure we do this once and right and proper. And if it became clear that some people could potentially fall out of eligibility through no fault of their own, it absolutely is appropriate that we go through this process and get those issues tidied up. So as we have heard, Mr. Speaker, three main provisions in this bill: the definition of built date, the legislative location of eligibility criteria, and finally the expiry of the financial assistance package. Obviously, the issues around the built date and the definitional issues around that became very stark as an issue post the Osborne versus Auckland City Council decision in June 2014, when the definition moved from a final point of council inspection to the point where the Code of Compliance certificate was issued, which potentially opened up eligibility to a slightly smaller, but obviously very critical if you're one of these people, pool of people who could potentially be eligible for the financial assistance package. So obviously this bill will enable that to occur. There were some technical changes with respect to essentially bringing the contribution criteria together, moving it into the Act to reinforce their validity. And finally, the third key component, Mr. Speaker, is the expiry date of the financial assistance package. That's due to expire on the 23rd of July. All claimants will need to have issued a notice to proceed, but we wanted to ensure that there was a mechanism to enable people who could demonstrate that they were close to that notice to proceed. They can still be part of that cohort, if you like. So some sensible law, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we do the right thing by these people. We did have a good Select Committee process, as discussed. The recommendations that came through, very technical in nature, but I think they can be summarised as just providing absolute certainty. Yes, there were only three submitters, but they pointed around the risks associated with ongoing ambiguity, and to the extent that we could be as precise as possible with respect to a couple of the components in the draft bill, they thought that would be useful. And particularly the definition of the qualifying claimant was an area. The financial assistance package eligibility requirements, again, that was an opportunity for us to tighten further. And I think we have done some good work, if I can say so, as a collective committee. I think we're well served by the officials guiding us through what is pretty technical legislative amendments to make sure we get the effect that we are wanting through this proposal. And ultimately what this is ensuring that those who do qualify and should qualify for this financial assistance package are enabled through good and enabling legislation. And as we know through this process, that's potentially around 70 properties. Might not sound a lot in the context of the many thousands who have been through this process, but for those 70, for those families, this legislation will enable them to get the right outcome. Mr. Speaker, I obviously support this bill to the House and look forward to the further discussions at the Committee of the Whole stage, which no doubt will be pending. Thank you.